Introduction. Black history tells the story of black people's lives over thousands of years, from the earliest human history to now. Black people are often defined in blanket terms to mean those of recent sub-Saharan African descent. This includes people living on the African continent, descendants of enslaved Africans trafficked in the transatlantic trade, and those who have migrated from Africa to other parts of the world. It is, however, a generalization of quite recent origin that ignores the varied nationalities, cultures, and life experiences of black people. Diverse peoples. The earliest known humans came out of Africa more than 200,000 years ago. For generations, those who stayed in the African continent and did not migrate and formed the populations of Asia, Australasia, America, and Europe view themselves not as black but as ethnic groups, such as the Nubians, the Yoruba, and the Swahili. These diverse peoples have and still have unique languages, traditions, and cultures, remarkable and complex systems of governance. From the 18th century onward, however, all the sub-Saharan Africans began to be categorized as part of a homogeneous group. Those involved in the transatlantic slave trade and European colonialism rationalized their subordination and treatment of these varied peoples of ancient origin by claiming that they were all part of a lesser race. Centuries of oppression. European traders bought enslaved Africans from other Africans and trafficked them as cargo to the New World. There they were sold like cattle in markets to labor in different parts of the Americas and the Caribbean, with the largest number of enslaved people arriving in Brazil. During this period, many enslaved people rebelled on the coast of West Africa. During the brutal transatlantic voyage and in the Americas, where many worked in appalling conditions, in one of their most successful revolts, the entire enslaved population of Saint Domingue, in the western part of Hispaniola, rose up and dominated their enslavers, forming the new nation of Haiti in 1804. After centuries of enslavement and rebellions, white people in the New World and Europe at last began to view enslavement as wrong and joined black enslaved people in the fight for abolition. In 1861, civil war broke out between the slave-holding states in America's South and the non-slave holding states of the North. The North won in 1865, and in the same year, the United States abolished slavery. Abolition, however, was not a panacea for black people, and many of the formerly enslaved continued to face inequality in the New World. Black people in the United States suffered under Jim Crow laws, which gave racial segregation legal force. To escape this new oppression, some of the formerly enslaved elected to move to Liberia and West Africa. This was a country newly created by white American abolitionists and others, intent on resettling black people in Africa with little or no consideration for African peoples already living there. Indeed, soon after abolition, many European powers began to colonize sub-Saharan Africa, continuing the fiction that black people were a lesser race. They claimed to be civilizing Africans. At the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, several European powers carved up Africa among themselves. Britain gained power over broad swaths of West Africa, and King Leopold of Belgium acquired the Congo as his private colony. No Africans were invited to the conference. By 1900, countries controlled 90% of African land. Colonial Africa was oppressive for many black people. They rebelled against European managers who often conscripted them into forced labor systems, punishing or killing those who failed to produce enough profits. In British Nigeria from 1929 to 1930, thousands of women revolted in a bid to redress their many grievances, looting factories, burning down court buildings, blocking train tracks, and cutting telegraph wires. Civil rights and beyond. In the 20th century, as many black people across the world remained subordinate to people of European descent, they found power in their black identity. They expressed it in vibrant music, art, and literature. They united under the banner of blackness to form international movements. They also reclaimed earlier denigrating terms such as Negro and colored to denote their solidarity. The term black became more popular only in the later 20th century. Excuse me. Pan-Africanism, a movement that called for all black people of African origin to unite in pursuit of common political and social goals, gradually gained traction. In 1800, Trinidadian Henry Sylvester Williams led the first Pan-African Conference in London, the United Kingdom, and 8 further meetings were later hosted in European and African cities and in New York. However, black people fought for their legal rights too. In Africa, countries struggled for independence and an end to colonial oppression. In the United States, black Americans fought for an end to segregation, while black people from French and British colonies who had migrated to France and Britain demanded the right to be treated as equal citizens. These fights had all varying amounts of success. Ghana gained independence in 1957, and other black African states followed suit. In the United States, the landmark Brown v. Board of Education decision in 1954 helped desegregate schools while Britain's passing of the Race Relations Act in 1965 was a crucial first step in curbing racial discrimination. The fight goes on. The legacy of enslavement and colonialization still casts a shadow over black lives, and the struggle for liberation continues. It is why Black Lives Matter launched in 2013 after the acquittal of a white man who killed a black teenager has become a worldwide movement highlighting the many injustices black people face. The aim of this book, too, is to shine a spotlight on these injustices, but also to celebrate black history and achievements and to illustrate how black people have influenced and transformed our modern world.